What's up, Taxi Talk? So I walked in here and I thought I was going to be super happy to speak to you today, but actually I'm quite depressed. And the reason I'm depressed is because this is the last Taxi Talk. So and I'm sure you've done this a million times, but who here has been to every Taxi Talk since the beginning? Okay, so she should get a prize. So I've also been to the first Taxi Talk, and I think I spoke at it. But I actually won't have a speaking career after this Taxi Talk since nobody else will want to listen to me. Anyway, welcome to the future of event tech. This is one of those things that everybody thinks they can talk about, but no one can actually talk about. So instead of telling you about artificial intelligence and some other apps that are going to come out, I'm going to try to take a very macro approach to what we're going to talk about today. And first and foremost, I just want to quickly tell you about social tables. Any social tables customers in the house out of curiosity? All right. Two people. Thank you. It's because we gave them tickets to come here. That's the truth. That's the truth. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. All right. So social tables, we raised a bunch of money. The reason I tell you raise money is because most people in event tech don't raise money. In fact, all of last year, about $40-some-odd million have been raised in event tech, while other industries have seen billions of dollars pour into it. We have approximately 5,000 customers. About 20% of them are planners, 80% are suppliers, and our software is used for about 3 million events. So if you've ever seen floor plan software, it's probably in our software. About a third of the hotels in the country use us. We have over 100 employees, and one of the really cool things that we're really proud of is the fact that our office space is actually an event space as well. So a third of our 30,000 square foot space is an event space that we've given out about 300 times over the last 2 years for free to anybody who wants to use an event. So why do we do that? It's in DC, yeah, you got to go to DC. So why do we do that? Well, face-to-face interactions must be successful, otherwise they're a giant waste of time. And at Social Tables, we believe that connecting the industry in order to have effortless event planning will achieve that goal. So if we give you tools to make your job easier, you make the event better. So if you go to an education conference, you learn, and if you go to a sales conference, you learn how to sell, and so on. I'm going to skip over this because I want to get into the core of the talk, but the last thing I'll say is we give a bunch of stuff for free, so check us out online at socialtables.com. So let's jump into 8 things that I want to talk about today, and I'm going to try to make this as palatable as possible, and it all starts here. The first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that nowadays, machines can do pretty much most of the things that humans can do that are predictable. So if there's a predictable task, it's most likely you can reprogram a machine to do it. Flip hamburgers, deliver you toiletries in your hotel room, and so on. If you're talking to your neighbor, please stop. That would be helpful to me if you're in the front. So if you look at the entire, you look at the entire labor market in the United States, 18% of all jobs have an element of predictable work. That means that 18% of 1 out of every 5 jobs has an element of something that can be repeated and repeated and repeated, like flipping hamburgers. Well, 78% of all those tasks can be completely automated. Anybody think about the most obvious thing in events that is predictable and can be automated? Chicken. Yes. Yes. Chicken. Chicken can be automated. What about room setup, room tear down? It's pretty automatable. But let's look at this other trend, then we'll put these 2 things together. Today, computers can understand voice better than we can. So if you look at Google's kind of trajectory into voice learning, you can see that 95% of it can be understood by a machine. That's as good as humans. And if for the New York Jews in the room like me, it's like 5% that people can understand. So what does this all mean? Well, it means one thing, and that the future of event tech, and I can't tell you what it is, will leverage this closing gap to create something new and exciting. So whether that means you can start talking to a machine and plan an event, or whether it means that you can press a button and set up the room the way you want, that will be what the future might look like when it comes to events. And when we think about events, I talked about social tables having raised $22.5 million. The reason I mention that is because investments are a leading indicator to what's coming ahead. So if you look at robotics, the investments in robotics continues to grow. If you look at artificial intelligence, the investments in artificial intelligence continue to grow. And if you look at blockchain, the investments in blockchain continue to grow. Now, one of these things will pave the way for the future of event technology. We just don't know which one it is yet. And tomorrow's event technology will be built on technologies and platforms that are currently not mainstream. So right now, all of us are staring at computers. In the future, we might be all staring at our wrists, or looking through our glasses, or doing something else that doesn't involve a screen. And that means that our attendees will experience things differently, and that means that our events will be completely different. So it's really hard. So it's a funny trend, but basically, you can't predict the next event tech trend because it will be built on technology that doesn't exist. So what if you start paying for events with a cryptocurrency as opposed to dollars? Or you have a cash bar, and instead of cash, you use a cryptocurrency. Something else that's actually very interesting is that over the past, decade or so, mergers and acquisitions, people buying other companies, companies buying other companies, have increased and increased and increased to the 2007 pre-crash times. But when you look at the public markets, right, these are in the private markets mostly, there is not much activity. So if you study the public markets, there are only very few public companies in the event sector. There was Active Network, which was public for about 2 years. It was then sold to a private equity firm. There was Cvent. They were public for about 3 years, 2.5 years. They went private equity. XO Group, the Knot, you may be familiar with, went public in '99, and Eventbrite's probably going to go public this year or next. But there aren't many event tech companies out there that are public. So event tech, even though we like to think it's a really big segment, it's actually not that big because there aren't many public companies that are active in the space. So why is that? Well, the reason that that's the case is because when it comes to events, we're in this funny kind of purgatory. And this is where it gets a little technical, but there's really two types of technologies. There is what's called horizontal technology and vertical technology. So vertical technology means it's technology for one segment, like automotive or manufacturing or hospitality. But when it comes to horizontal, you can use it in every industry. So can anyone think of a tool they use as part of their business that is used in many other industries? Sure, Facebook. Buffer, yeah, social media is used across. Salesforce, excellent one. Salesforce, you can use Salesforce CRM for any industry. But when it comes to events, there really aren't any event-specific technologies because the technologies we use are used in every other industry, right? Marketing automation, newsletters, websites, databases, word processing. These are all tools that are used in every industry. In fact, the only things that are unique to our industry from a technology perspective are registration, ticketing, and those are the companies that have gone public, like Cvent and Active and Eventbrite. Soon to go public. And the stuff that's vertical, the stuff that's event specific, doesn't have a big enough market, like the event market, the event app market, or audience response applications. Can you think of an audience response app that will go public? It's not conceivable because it's a small market. Even so, our core business at Social Tables, before we did all the other things we do, was diagramming, floor plans. A company like ours can't go public. If we sold to every single person in the world, we'd probably make $100 million. That's not enough to go public. So there isn't really a market opportunity there big enough to justify event technology to go public. So what does this mean? What will happen? So one of the things that could happen is that event technology will consolidate, and there'll be one oracle for event technology. And there'll be the oracle of event technology, and they'll have everything. They'll have apps, they'll have registration, they'll have on-site reg, badge printing, whatever you need, they'll have it. The other way this can go is can be highly fragmented. And that's why all of you that use all these tools always struggle with connecting them and integrating them. because there's no integrations between all the tools we use because they're all built by different vendors. So the kind of worst scenario is that there'll be many little fragmented pockets and many little products that won't talk to each other. And I think that's probably where where the future will go. So event technology will always kind of be an afterthought. But the reality is that when you look at the spending of meetings, most people aren't actually following the money. If you look at where meeting production expenditures take place, the top two are food and beverage and audiovisual. So the most money when it comes to meeting production, event production, comes from F&B and AV. In fact, almost half of the meeting budget. The other one is venue rental. So you can think about maybe like a venue marketplace. That would be a really big business. So the technology companies, the people who are starting companies, haven't really been thoughtful about following the money, myself included, and actually building a business on top of the biggest opportunity. So what I think will happen is that event tech will follow industry spending patterns and focus on the highest grossing patterns, food and beverage and audiovisual. All right, related to that, the large vendors in this space like Freeman or GES or PSAV, all multi-billion-dollar companies, right? Freeman does over $3 billion a year in revenue. PSAV does about $1 billion. GES is huge as well. And they're starting to buy all these event technology companies. Freeman just bought, Freeman, if you know that when you go to exhibit convention center, they're the ones who move, Javits, exactly. They just bought a registration software, event registration software. GES bought hardware manufacturer for events to kind of track people or something. So I believe that event tech will start being housed under very large AV and production companies like Freeman or GES. Unless we all get together and create the Oracle of event tech. What's another opportunity? Well, that third one was venue rental. That was 10% of meeting expenditures. And when it comes, who here, if you're willing to admit, makes commission off of their work? Okay, about five of you, and I'm going to triple that number and assume that about a third of the room does it because we all do it in this industry. It's totally okay. It's how a lot of people make money. But the reality is that business model is not sustainable for a lot of owners, especially of venues and hotels. But when you look at intermediaries, right, the folks that book sleeping rooms you often are part of events and meetings. We look at intermediaries, they actually intermediate 43% of sleeping rooms. So in other words, almost half of the sleeping rooms booked in meetings and events happen because of an intermediary like a Helms Briscoe or Conference Direct or Merritt's Travel or HPN. So almost half. And it's predicted that by 2022, in 5 years, that will be 60%. So they're essentially the real estate brokers for meetings and events. And they're making all this money, at least 10%. And this is a huge opportunity because the spending on it is in the billions. So between $3 and $4 billion is how much people make off commissions for booking sleeping rooms. And what I believe will happen is the next big event tech company will disintermediate these folks. And they will provide on-demand event booking technology to drive down costs and enhance service. Because when you look at Marriott and Hilton, as if you saw, they just dropped their commission by 30% to travel agents who do group business. The reason they did that is they said, oh, we want to invest more in our meeting space. We want to make sure it looks like Convene. We want to give them better. They didn't say that, but I think that's what they want. Because who the hell wants to go to a ballroom anymore, right? So they say, well, we're going to pay for that innovation. We're going to pay for that innovation by taking the commission we're paying and investing it in our hotel product. And hey, by the way, because we just acquired and became a huge hotel company, we have way more bargaining power. And we can spend that on marketing instead of paying commission. So I want to just kind of take things in a different direction and talk about farmers. Back in the 1900s, there were 30 million farmers in the United States. This will make sense in a second. By 1990, there were under 3 million farmers in the United States, even as the population tripled. So we have more people and less farmers. 90% of the American agriculture workers lost their jobs, mostly due to automation. So factory farming, chickens. Deborah, chickens were automated. You were right, chickens were automated. Yet somehow in the 20th century, we lived through some of the most prosperous times in our country's history. How do you explain that? How do you explain the fact that all these people lost their jobs, yet it was some of the most prosperous times? Now, forget the fact that rich people got richer, which is a reality. We were able to get out of that, and we reached record unemployment. We were able to get out of that. So this is because of the idea that, besides workforce retraining and so on, there's two kinds of ways to think about job replacement. There's automation and augmentation. Automation is the idea that you take what a human can do, right, that burger flipping, and you just deploy a computer to do what it does. And first you start just moving the person's arm, then you start just pressing the hamburger, and before you know it, you have a mechanical arm that can flip a hamburger and prepare it, and you don't need a human. When it comes to augmentation, which is a little different, it starts with a human can do, but then it figures out how you can add technology to deepen that job. So I'm going to give you an example. If we reframe the conversation as opposed to just replacing jobs, and we think about, if you take the job replacement and you take making the job better, and you think about this idea called human-centered automation, then you can start using automation to enhance the capabilities of humans and compensate for our limitations. So for example, a doctor can conduct surgery from 100 miles away. Or a surgeon can wear glasses and know the heart rate instead of looking at the monitor. And let's just take that a little further, and let's actually think about the doctor and redesign that job. What does a job that's augmented by technology look like for a doctor? Well, it means doctors now have the world's medical knowledge at their fingertips. IBM Watson can actually detect cancer at a 90% rate, while a human can do it at a 50% rate. But yet we still want to go talk to a human, right? So what if doctors had all the IBM Watson horsepower, but they still provided that human element? What if they used their technology to help them be more effective at their job? And what if they devoted their mental energy to actually giving you the bedside manner we all long for and the connection we all need to have a holistic understanding of the patient, as opposed to just giving you 10 minutes of their day and kicking you the hell out of their office? So if we thought about this kind of approach to redesigning jobs in our industry using event technology to rethink about some of the jobs that exist in our industry, let's just take a look at what that might look like. Hotel salespeople might become meeting consultants because they suddenly get measured on how successful a meeting is. Event planners become business event strategists because they sit at the boardroom to make sure that the CEO's strategic initiatives are met. Caterers become experience curators. AV professionals become learning partners because they know how to provide education in the best way possible. This is how we can redesign and reframe jobs based on technology. So I believe that the jobs in our industry will be redesigned around technology as opposed to technology redesigning our jobs. And that's what human-centered automation looks like. Now let's look at the airline industry, where soft skills have become completely indispensable over time. This is my favorite slide out of the 30 I'm showing you today. So if you look at the red, that's the pilot. And if you look at the blue, that's the flight attendant. There is a legally required skill to operate, and they both have to have it. There's an airline minimum expectation like leave and depart and arrive on time. And then there's a component to just knowing your job, right? Tammy Jo Schultz, the Southwest airline pilot who saved countless lives the other day, is the perfect example of what we're talking about, because her plane was on autopilot and she was able to calmly communicate with a control tower to have a safe landing. But it was the flight attendants who also helped. And it's the flight attendants are the ones you're always interacting with on a regular basis when you're flying. It's the flight attendants who represent the brand of the industry. You have no idea who the pilots are. You have no idea who the people who are handling your bags are unless you destroy them. So, or unless Southwest has a campaign around it. But the reality is the flight attendant is actually much more important than the pilot. And that's the message I want to share with you today. That it's the human element, the soft skills that are provided that event tech can never replace. So that becomes the pivotal role. And it's much more important than the proficiency role, even though they make a quarter of the salary of a pilot. So despite technological advances, events will realize the most value from human beings. So I can talk about event tech all day, but that's the reality. So I urge you to think about how we can insert humans just like we insert technology. And with that, I'm done. Let's create better events together. You can get in touch with me. That's my email. And if you want this presentation, either go on SlideShare or give me your card, and I'll send it to your box within 72 hours.